It was the word garu last week?
Yes, garu.
Okay. Bhikkhu follows this one. Bhikkhu is another common one. Bhikkha, except bhikkhu is actually different. Bhikkhu is an exception here. This is, I think, a leftover of the dual case. I'm not sure, actually. There is no dual case in Pali, but some of these words are remnants of a dual case where it's only referring to two. But bhikkhu would be bhikkhawo. Bhikkhu is actually irregular. Bhikkhawo, it's not, you would never see bhikkhuwo. Bhikkhawo. Other than that, mostly very familiar, no? Na, sa, sama, and yasa, and no. Na and no are fairly common. They weren't in the... here you see it as well. Na, no, sma, no. Karusa, sming, su, no. And a long... We were seeing anang before, right? With these ones, it's unang, but the same pattern. Uhi instead of ehi. And so next we have winyu, long, u. Winyu comes from we, the prefix that we learned last week, and nya. Nya is the root in regards to knowing. U is a suffix that we'll learn about later. It turns a root into a noun, meaning one who. Like if you look at these examples down here, one who is abibu, one who is katanya, one who is paraga, one who is vedaga, one who is sayambhu. You add an u on the end and it becomes, it might be nu, I can't remember, but it becomes, I think it's just u. In fact, I don't even think that's the... Anyway, we'll see what the suffix is. Vinya means knowing specially, knowing deeply, clearly. Vinyu, one who knows clearly. What they say about the Dhamma, Pachatang Veditapo Vinyuhi. The Dhamma is to be known by oneself for those who are wise, for those who are Vinyu. Okay, so next week, Vinyu.
I have a question here. With Vinyu. At the fifth and seventh form, there is a U missing. And I think that it's an error.
Oh, it is. I wonder where that went.
And invocative is you or u or u?
Short.
Short?
And that is short.
Okay. And also for
same
the
like
long
Sati. If you look at Sati, it was the same. Oh, we haven't done. Have we done Sati? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it is long.
Yeah, it is long. Only with the feminine, the vocative for u is short u.
Yeah, I'm not 100% on that, but I think it should be short. T is long, huh? Can't remember. Well, unless you can look it up in another grammar and see it, check it out, but I think it's short.
On the digital Pali reader, for instance, it says that there is no vocative.
There is. I mean, vocative is how you call someone. If you want to say, hey, Winyu.
Yeah, there is a dash.
Well, the digital power reader is not perfect.
Okay, because I found some
But look
differences
up
as well.
No, not Bhikkhu. I should Winyu. What's a... Oh, and this should be long as well. Well, these aren't common words. Winyu is probably the most common. And you would never actually see it in the Alapana, but there is an Alapana, of course. There has to be. You can look it up in Duracell's grammar. In Duracell's grammar, he'll probably mention what it is. I can bring up the Thai as well if you really want me to confirm it.
And I have one more question for the long E. In accusative in the second form, is there not an nigahita?
Yeah.
But with the there.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not a simple okay.
Yeah, those should have been correct. Yeah, Winyu is a short U. CT. CT is also a short E. I was suspicious of that. There you go. CT. Sorry about that. I'm not sure how this came about. Who wrote these down? Errors. Oh well. Language changes anyway, so this is how it changes. Okay, so learn Winyu for next week.
Can I just say something before we start? I need to talk to Royston or there. Because I don't know if he's there. I sent him a message.
Oh yeah, just
can you record today's class on OBS? Like, do you have that available?
Yes, I've turned it on. No worries.
Oh, okay, thanks. I have to go. I'm sorry. I'm really busy with university, but I'll be back in like 2 or 3 weeks. Thank you, everyone.
Not at all. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to quickly go through Sankhayā. I don't want to spend too much because I actually would like to start into Akhayāta this week. Is there any questions about last week's grammar? Wasn't so much grammar last week. The suffixes are... There's a lot to take in there, but not much we can do besides just memorize or at least learn about them. Not much theory behind it. Sankhayā, there's only a couple of things to say. I'm not going to get into great detail, but first of all, there are two kinds of Sankhayā. So Purana means that which makes something full. But they're what we call in English cardinal. And that's first, second, third, fourth. Instead of one, you say first. When you're talking about the first thing, you don't say the one thing, of course. You say the first thing. Bhakati means ordinary. Purana means something which makes full. I'm not quite sure why that's the name. It's just how the word is used in that language, in Pali, I guess. Okay, so Bhakati, these are the words for them. Most of these ones up to 10, you just have to memorize them. There's nothing special about any of them. But at 11, you see it follows a familiar pattern. With the dasa at the end, you get eka. It goes back to eka again, almost. I mean, there's changes a little bit. Eka dasa, dva dasa. But even if you don't memorize these, if you memorize 1 to 10, you can pick apart what this is. Because, well, this is obviously 1, this is obviously 10, this is obviously 2 and 10. This one not quite so clear. You just have to memorize that dasa becomes rasa, and so te rasa. Ti becomes te. And remember, that's the whole strengthening. E and A are related. Chu. Chu comes from chatu. You can say chatu dasa or chu dasa. This is probably more common. These two, you've got both. Pannarasa, panchadasa. This one's more common. Panchadasa, I'm not even sure I've ever seen. Solasa is just way out there. Still has the asa on the end, but cha becomes sol. So and the da becomes la. Solasa is 16, just irregular. Satarasa, easy to see. Rasa, dasa becomes rasa, atta. And then 19, and this is a pattern. 19 is translated as 20 minus 1, or 1 less than 20. So instead of saying 9 and 10, you say 1 less than 20. Very strange, but it's how it goes. 1 less than 30 is ekunatingsa, or ekunatingsati. So 29 is ekunatingsati. 39 is 1 less than 40, so ekunachatalisa. 49 ekunapanyasa. 59 ekunasati. 69 ekunasatati. 79 ekunaasiti. Ekunanavuti. And then 99 is ekuna satang. These ones, the grammar for them gets a little weird. I'm not sure if I have it recorded here, but it's somewhat strange. We'll come across some of it in the first 2 sections of maybe the second section of Chakupala, so I'll show you there. But first, let's just talk about the ordinary ones. So there's 2 things you have to know about these. What is their gender and what is their number? Because obviously you can't have both singular and plural for these ones. They actually have ingrained in them either singular or plural. 1 is ekavachana, well, that makes sense. 2 to 18 are bahuvachana, well, that also makes sense, right? Always bahuvachana. Always plural, 2 to 18. But 19 to 98 are ekavachana again. And 19 is, of course, included in there because it's just another form of 20. It's not 19, it's 20 minus 1. Stop recording. All right, is the audio recording important?
I'm recording the video, Bhante.
Does it have audio in it?
It should, yes.
Okay, then that's good. So these ones here, and 19 by extension, because it's just visati with an ekuna on it, right? Same sort of word. But these ones are to be considered entities, right? So they're singular. And then when you get to 99, it's no longer takes the form of nuvuti again, right? Because it takes the form of satang. Satta is a neuter. I mean, here you see the gender, but satang. So ekuna satang all the way up to these ones are then they're normal nouns again. So they're neuter, and they are entities, but they go by how many of them there are. Right, because you don't have multiple asiti. You do actually. We'll see you do, but not in the same way as you have 200. Right? You don't say 2 asitis. You do actually, but it's in a different way. We'll see how that is. But this one you have dwe satang or something like that, or ti satang. So it'd be 300. Or actually, I'm not sure if you do that. Anyway, if you have more than 100, it's satani, right? It's plural. You haven't learned neuters yet, but it takes the plural form. So these ones actually are singular and plural. Genders are a bit of a headache. I wouldn't worry too much about memorizing them, but get a sense of them. And to explain 1 to 18, take all three genders. So they go by the thing of the gender of the thing they're modifying. If it's 3 people, 3 men, then it's masculine. 3 women, it's feminine. 3 of a word that is masculine, 3 of a word that is feminine. Depends on the noun that they are referring to, even if that noun isn't specified. If they're referring to a noun with a gender, they become that gender. But these ones don't do that. These ones are always feminine. So they are conjugated according to usually either the eat feminine or the feminine. That would be feminine, wouldn't it? Panyasa. It's funny, should be panyasa. Not sure why this is panyasa. Anyway, what we have here is that they're feminine, so they're feminine. So it wouldn't be panyasa. It wouldn't be panyasa, it would be panyasa. Because you don't have short a feminine. Uh, 99 plus or neuter. So that's all of these ones. Any questions? I'm not going to make you memorize these. Some of them are a bit irregular, but I think we're going to skip over them as far as memorization. That doesn't mean you shouldn't know them. You should know them. Some of them are pretty similar. This is fairly standard. This is, of course, also very standard. This should be ekena. So someone was taking this down not quite slowly enough. I was probably going too quickly. Iko, ikang, ikina, ikasa. What's going on here? Okay, someone got this very wrong. Feminine, I guess, is all ekaya. I must have told whoever was writing this that these ones in neuter are all the same, and they thought I meant the same as this one, but I actually meant they're the same as the masculine. It must have been a miscommunication. Tinanang, is that correct? I guess that is. Dunanang. Dunanang. This is why it looks weird, because these are wrong. Yeah, this was a misunderstanding. Someone someday will have to put this in a real chart, I think. So I think we'll have to say, I think these are right now, but you might want to take everything here as a grain of salt and look it up in a proper grammar. Yeah, this is also wrong. How did they get all these wrong? Chatari, chatari, chatuhi, chatunang. Pancha, so the rest are feminine. They're all going to be the same. Panchanang, panchahi, panchanang, chasu, gunavisang. Okay. I must not have gotten into much detail because this is not quite complete. So Purana, as I said, are the cardinal numbers. And so I'm going to get through this quickly, but I see I should correct something here. So this is only, these are what they are. This doesn't explain. This isn't. I must have gone through these too quickly because this isn't complete. Okay, so I think I'm still gonna skip it, but this isn't exact. But anyway, so the masculine would be Yuttadhammo. The feminine would be Yuttadhamma. And so the neuter is, of course, Yuttadhammang. And the same with Dutya and Tatita, but for other ones, you have feminine changes. So with this one, it's O, and then it can also be E. And then ang. And that goes from pretty much everything after that. Not all of them. Yeah, it gets complicated, but be aware the main complication is in the feminine. The neuter and the masculine are pretty standard, but in the feminine, some of them only take E, some of them only take A. Most after Chatuthi will take the E, but some of them don't take the A. And these three only take A, Patama. But the main thing to remember is that feminine, it can be one or the other, because you're only going to have to recognize it. If you see Patami, or if you say Chatuthi, Panchami, or Panchama, those are the feminine. If you see Panchamo, masculine. All right. So what I haven't talked about is how these are grammatically used, and it's a bit complicated. I don't have it in front of me. I don't even think the textbook goes into good detail. There was another textbook that we used when I learned this. And so you'll see it's used normally, like due bhikkhu, 2 monks, for example. But it's also used in... Let's go to Cakupala for a second, just to get this over with. So like here's a number. This means, so again, going back to how they're formed, Chatu is 4, Panyasa is 50. So 54 is, in English we put the 50 first. In Pali they put the 4 first. 4 and 50. And Koti is a number meaning 100,000, I think. So that's a normal usage of a number. You just put them together like that. But in the second part, well, here's how I said you don't say 280s. You actually do. This means 280s. Because he's talking about this 80 and this 80. Due asiti. If you look at due asiti, you'd actually think it meant 82, but it doesn't. It should mean 82, but it doesn't. Here it means 280s. It's a weird compound. I don't see the special way of using... Okay, well, then I think we're going to skip to the digital Pali Reader for a second. And I'll raise this up. So here we are. Panchamatehi bhikkhu satehi. This is the other way that you use these. I guess only with large words. Yeah, with satta and sahasa. Sahasa means 1,000, satta means 100. So here satta, or satehi, because it follows purisa, right? Satta means 100. So this means with 100. So a bhikkhu satta means 100 bhikkhus. And this is how you say it. You say, if you want to talk about 100 bhikkhus, you don't usually say satehi bhikkhuhi. I'm not sure if you could. You might be able to, but you really don't. You say it like this, bhikkhu satehi, with 100 bhikkhus. And here, you don't need this matta here. Matta is just an extra word meaning a total of, or an amount of, means an amount, kind of. But you can also just say panchahi. If you just said panchahi bhikkhu satehi, this means with 5 bhikkhu satta. And what that means is with 500 bhikkhus. So instead of putting the 5 and the 100 together, you say 5 hundreds of bhikkhus. So it would be panchahi bhikkhu satehi. That's the confusing way of using numbers in Pali, and it's common. So you'll see this. If you see something like this and you wonder what's being said here, why are these numbers all over the place? This is how they say it. 500s, and then 5 and then the hundreds, and then the thing of the hundreds. How 100 of what? 100 of bhikkhus. So be aware of that, because you will see it. Any questions about numbers? Okay, I want to get into verbs. I don't know how much time we can spend on it. I guess there's a lot. It's going to take several weeks. So let's get right into it. So when we talked about nama, akhayāta, or is the word for verbs. I don't even know what the word akhayāta means. but it's the word they use. And when I talked about nama, nama needs 5 things, right? Let's go back to nama. 3 things, sorry. Right, ling vachana vibhati. I thought it was 5. I can't think of what else there would be. Anyway, this is important because the gender, the speech, the declension is important, but remembering these things about nama is going to be important when we talk about Akhayāta, because they match. They have to match, right? Verbs have 8 things, and it looks scary. It's not that scary, but there is quite a number of things we have to talk about. But this one, and not linga, what has to match? This one has to match with the nama. I guess that is the only one.
Bhivati.
No, purisa.
Declension, right? Bhivati.
It doesn't match. I'll talk about that. Purisa has to match. That's why there is more than 3, because purisa, nama are going to have a purisa. Vachana. No, sorry. What am I doing here? No, they only have vachana. Sorry. Purisa, yes, but because nama have a purisa as well, right? Most of the times when you see a nama, it's going to be 3rd person, but if it's an alapana, it's going to be 1st person. And there are the guna nama, tuang, the tumha, which is the 2nd person, and amha, which is 1st person. Verbs have to accord with nouns that way. So these 2 anyway, they have to accord with. Vibhati, they don't accord, because vibhati for verbs says something different than it does for nouns. The verb is going to relate to the subject of the sentence, just like in English. But the subject is, of course, always going to be 1-1 or 1-2, right? Some verbs don't have a subject, but there's a special case. Otherwise, a verb has a subject and it has to relate to that subject. The subject will always be in the nominative, but the declension of the Akhayāta, the verb, can be quite different. So let's go through these. There are 8 tenses, and these aren't that scary. These 3 are somewhat interchangeable. I don't think you need to worry too much about differentiating them, but you have to know how to generally recognize them, of course, because you have to know whether something's in the past tense. Parokha is generally used for things in the ancient past. Hiyatani is for things in the general past, let's say. And ajatani is things in the recent past, so only today. These are translated this way because hiya means yesterday, ajja means today. But they don't really accord with that. It's not just for things that are today. Anyway, these ones are all going to have their own declension set. So this is where we get the paradigms. Each one of these has its own paradigm. Vattamana is the biggest one. It's almost always you're going to see. This is the most common one you're going to see. Because it's not just used for the present, it's also used for the close or past or future. So it's used instead of these 2. Or instead of this one anyway, kind of. And it's often used instead of this one. But it's usually pretty clear how it's used. It's not used when it's important that you differentiate the present and the future, but if you're generally talking about something without having to differentiate present and future, you can still use Vatamana for the future and the past. In fact, much of the Tipitaka is written in the past. Like if you look at this, let's see, hoti. The verb hoti is a present tense verb. Hoti means is. So this is the subject, the Bhagava is. Well, he isn't, he was. Thus I have heard. At one time, so we already know it isn't now, it was at one time, ekang samayang, the Bhagava hoti. Hoti, hoti can be used as the past, honti as well. Honti is present tense form. Here we have, I think, is a past tense. Upagachi is past, definitely past. And here, viharanti, again present. Bhasati, present. But these are all referring to something that happened in the past. So this is incredibly common to use the present. It's not just recent past, it's very much in the past. But it's sort of the present of the thing you're talking about, you see. That's the general sense. If you're talking about something that's going to happen in the future, the thing that you're talking about has a present tense in relation to itself, right? So that's kind of how this is used. If in relation to the thing you're talking about, something happened before it or after it, or even not, because you see this is still talking about the same timeline, but it's suddenly using a past tense, I think. Right here as well, udapadi, this is past. So you can't entirely depend upon the tenses, especially Vatamana. These two are important. They fulfill specific roles. Panchami and Sattami are 5th and 7th, which I guess has some ancient significance. But those are just names. Panchami is the imperative when you tell someone you must do something. We talked about that earlier in relation to the word ma. Remember, if you want to negate an ordinary verb, you use na to negate it, but for imperative, you use ma. Ma gachata, don't go. If you want to say, may all beings be happy, you say, sabe satta sukita hontu. Hontu, because honti is what we saw here. Honti means they are. Hontu, may they be. Satami is what we would translate as should. And I mentioned this already earlier. It can mean one should do something, like you really should go. And it can also mean if you should. If someone should do this, they should do that. So optative, in the sense of if they were to do that. Bhavisanti is just a funny word because it's actually this is a thing in Pali and Sanskrit. They name things after examples of themselves. So Bhavisanti is an example of Bhavisanti. Bhavisanti is Bhavisanti, meaning this word here is in the future tense. You'll recognize it with the is. So the ordinary one is Bhavanti. Bhavanti means they will be. Bhavisanti Bhavanti means they are. Bhavisanti means they will be. It's an easy one to recognize. It's an important one to remember. You see it and you say, that's future. Easy to recognize. Kala Tipati is incredibly rare. I don't know if I've ever come across it in the wild. But it's the past of the future. It's like if you want to say, by the time I get there, if they will have left. You understand? So once I go, if when I get there, they will have left or they will have already eaten. So it's useful. In English, we have words, we have ways of saying it, but in Pali, they have one word that says it. Again, I'm sure it must be out there, obviously, but I don't know if I've ever seen it. Although I may just not have recognized it. So Yuttadhammo, most common. These ones have specific roles. You have to know them. Fairly easy to recognize. Pretty easy to recognize. This one's mostly going to be used in speech. This one's easy to recognize. Whereas this one has is, Satami has aya. So mostly you're going to see something like that. This a in the middle here instead of the is. Easy way to recognize optative. These ones are a big pain, learning about all the things that might be past tense. For me, I did memorize them briefly, but in general, I've just come to kind of say, okay, it doesn't look like anything else. I think that's past tense. Because I don't have to compose, right? We're not composing Pali, we're trying to recognize it. So you can just generally say, that's probably past. It's not the best way. That's probably not the right way, of course, but honestly, because it's so much trouble, because they're so irregular and they have so many different forms and quirks to them, as you'll see, you can try and memorize them and it can be a bit useful, but it's not as useful as it should be because they're pretty weird. Avisanti, easy to recognize. Kalatipati, don't really use it, so don't worry about it. Okay, I'm not going too fast, am I? No, because we've only got through Kala, time. The 8 tenses. Another thing I can say, important to say, well, it'll make more sense when we go along. These 3 here, this one as well. Maybe this one, I'm not sure. We'll see. But this one and these 3 have no, I'm not going to talk about it now. We'll talk about it later. But they're grouped. Let's put it that way. And you'll see how they're grouped later. They're formed very similarly. They only have a difference at the ending. We'll talk about that. Pada. Okay, so pada is a little bit weird as well. Theoretically, and quite often is the case, the pada are, well, they're not used the way they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be what? The reflexive and whatever the opposite of reflexive is. Can't remember. Direct, maybe? Direct and reflexive? I can't remember. But parasapada means about someone else. Atanopada means reflexive. So if you say something like, what's reflexive? I think passive, actually. I'm not good with grammar, as you can tell, but let's move away from those because they don't make any sense anyway. They don't have any meaning anyway. Just know that we have 2 groups. So okay, let's make this clear. Here's Yuttadhammo. Yuttadhammo is present, or again, very close past or future. And this is a paradigm for Yuttadhammo. Okay, so looking at this group here, you have third person, second person, first person. Remember, as I said, with Pali, the verbs are backwards, so third person is actually called the first person, second person is called the second person, and first person is called the third person. That's why you put them in this order. So these are and then you have eka vachana and bahu vachana, singular and plural. So these are the endings. This is a paradigm here. Verbs that end in T, that's 1-1, third person singular. This one, third person plural, second person singular. Okay, so this is not so hard to understand. Doesn't look like much here, but you get the picture, I think. Singular this column, plural this column, first person or third person, second person, and first person. So you'd have verbs like gacchati, gacchati. Gaccha, the root is gam, means in regards to going. The stem is gacha, so gachati. And here you'd have gachanti, gachanti, and so on. Gachasi. Gachata, gacha. And then this actually is long. Because the stem is gacha, you get gachami with a long A. And gachama. These endings, not so much. These endings are more for this one. But okay, so this is parasapada. And then you have another set for atanopada. So you have two sets that you have to learn. These 6 and these 6. Parasapada much more common, but atanopada is used generally for passive. So what's the difference between active and passive? Active katuvachaka, passive kamavachaka. The difference is thus. If you're talking about a person doing something to something else, in this case, the cook, Suda means cook. Suda pachati, cooks odanang, the rice. This sentence means the cook cooks the rice, or directly, the cook, the rice cooks. But in English, we have to be careful of word order, because in English, if you say the rice cooks the cook, if you put it in that order, it means the rice is doing the cooking. But in Pali, word order doesn't mean anything, doesn't have any significance, or hardly any, usually none. So even if you mix these words up, it still means the same thing. This still means this guy is doing the action, even though it says the rice, the cook cooks. Or if you did it like this and made it a real problem in English, the rice cooks the cook. Doesn't mean what it should mean. But in Pali, that's not how you differentiate them. The way you differentiate them is by the verb. So atanopada forms of verbs are generally used for passive. And then you see what happens here is the rice is put into the 1-1 form, nominative singular, and it becomes the subject, but it's not doing the cooking. It's having something done to it, which is passive. So, and you notice that Suda is put in the instrumental. Memorize this or remember this form, because this is how a passive sentence is formed. In passive, the person doing the thing is put in the third third declension, the instrumental. By the cook, the rice is cooked. So a passive verb is when you say is excuse me, is cooked instead of cooks. The rice is cooked by the cook. And you see the form is different. You have another suffix here, stuck in the middle. Ia, actually, I think is the suffix, and then te is the ending. So with passive, you usually have this intermediary suffix to inform you as well. But these are the endings that we're looking at. So generally, ti and te. And again, these are not really, maybe sometimes, but it's more like, honestly, it's more like sometimes these are used interchangeably. People are generally not very good at grammar, and so it seems like that's the case where people in the text, they just end up using the wrong forms, not because they didn't know their grammar, but that language evolved like that. So in language, it's not quite so cut and dried. Sometimes parasapada is used for passive. I guess not so much, but well, you'll have to see. I don't think it's quite so cut and dried. I know in Sanskrit, he told us that it wasn't. Just try to remember these. I would really suggest memorizing this one. It's by far the most common thing you're going to come across. And these ones, you should know them. You see a pattern here. If you see a verb that ends in A, it's usually passive. And also, as I said, it's formed differently. So you usually see this ia there as well. So not just a te ending, you see ia. Usually, I'm not sure always. Okay, so pada is just the two different types of suffixes. So when you memorize a paradigm, you're going to have this many things to memorize. So this is Wattamana. These are the endings for Wattamana. And now you know verbs, more or less. We'll talk next about roots. Panchami, these are the endings for imperative. I guess I'm not going to go over them. Point out here that this means the ending is often just to not put an ending. So this is not an error. This actually means nothing, that you actually don't add an ending. So like gaccha, when you say gaccha, and you'll see that, gaccha means go. It's telling a single person to go. Satami, as I mentioned, has this eya, and not always, not in the Atanopada. And yeah, here's an example. Like this one, you'll often see for active speech. So even though this is supposed to be for passive, it's not. Eta, depending what form they use, is no different from eya. And you should notice if you study these that the endings here are pretty much the endings here, except you add eya. No, that's not quite true. These ones not, but these ones are. Next, we get into the past tenses. And this is where it gets kind of screwy because these endings are not great, not greatly adhered to. I don't really know what to say about past tense, except that it's hard. Anyway, learn the endings. Maybe you'll have better luck than I did, but I think we'll see that it's just going to be something you have to recognize. But one thing to say about past, and you should write this down, the two other past tenses. And I think this one might be the most common. Yeah, you'll see these ones a lot. Like ahosi, ahesung. So what I was saying is one thing you should write down is that past tense verbs are often prefixed by a short a. Ahosi. So if you have the verb hoti, the ending for third person singular is actually hosi. It's the e, but you put an s in there just because it's actually an irregular verb, but it's an okay example. And you put an a at the beginning. So one really easy way to recognize past tense verbs is they often start with a. Quite often. So if you see a hosi, it's easy to remember that that's a past tense. Agat, gacha, agachung maybe, agachingsu. Here's which one. You'll see ingsu. Agachingsu means went. They went. But then you might also have agachingsu, which would mean come. They came. And future, easy to recognize, it's just is, as I said. It's just, this is literally the present form, Vatamana, with is at the beginning. And Kaladipati is similar to Bhavisanti in that you use is, but you put the past tense endings on. Some of the past tense endings on it. And that sentence, that's verbs. No, that's not verbs. That's the beginning part of verbs. I think we'll stop there. We'll do a little bit here, and then that's it. So what we have in the future are the actual roots, learning about the roots, which isn't a big deal. And then Vachaka, Pachaya, yeah, and that's it. And then that's it for verbs. So we'll have to learn a few more things next week. Okay, so let's look at some sentences, because here's where you start to get into translation. At this point, I mean, you should get a bit of a more in-depth study of the verbs, so you'll have to go over that stuff that I went through again on your own, try and get a sense of it. But once you've learned that, and the next stuff on verbs as well, then normally is when they would start you to do translations. So I would say after we finish verbs, you should be prepared to start doing translation work. You should be prepared to start, let's say start on part 2, because hopefully by that time we'll have gone through part 1 together. And you should start tearing this up. And out of this, making this. It'll be incredibly hard in the beginning, of course. But this is where the real work begins, where you start to figure out grammar. Start to learn how to translate. So, okay, I've mentioned this already. This is just me putting it in the textbook. The general word order in sentences is subject, everything else, object, verb. And we've seen already that that isn't usually adhered to, but it is the theoretical order. All right, so here's Vattamana. The Bhikkhu expounds the Dhamma. Here's si. Si is the 2-1 ending, so this is second person singular. Twang agachasi. This means you are coming. But this is in the textbook, the Thai textbook, as an example of how it's used in the past. But we've seen already lots of ways it's used to talk about past tense. Kinkaromi means what, and this is I do. This doesn't mean what am I doing. This is what will I do. It could mean what am I doing, but in this sense, in this instance, it can be used to mean what will I do. Kinkaromi, what will I do? Ewang wadehi, speak thus. He is the 2-1 form. So we saw here the 2-1 form is si. In Panchami, it's he. So vadehi. Another thing about Panchami is this. So there's a lot of information, I know. Probably out of order as well. So one thing I should have mentioned about Panchami is that it often adds an a before the suffix. So vadasi or vadati is he or she or it speaks. Vadeti, this means may he speak. And vadehi means may you speak or speak. Write that down about Panchami. Of course, with a verb short as this, there's no a, but the ending, you'll see if you look at the declension above, the paradigm above, instead of honti, it's hontu. and the eta. Again with the A at the beginning. Satami, I've said before, I should go forth. Pabajayang, I should go forth. One should engage. Bhajeta purisutame, one should engage with the highest sort of people. But here's the second meaning. Punyanche puriso kayira. And kayira is satami. It's a strange form of satami, but it is. If a purisa should do punya, so if they should do. As for the past tenses, I'll leave these up to you. I don't have much to say, except here's another example. Short a at the beginning. Here's a short a at the beginning. Visanti kaladipati, here's the example that apparently maybe exists. So chayanang labisa, if he will have gained a vehicle, he will have gone. I don't know what that even means. Maybe they're talking about a person. I don't know if he's there yet, because if he's already got a vehicle, he will have already left. Something like that. All right, we stop there. Is that a lot? Any confusion? A lot of confusion? Questions? Clear? Any feedback? Am I going to lose you all next week?
No, but it's a lot.
It is a lot, huh?
Yeah.
Recording will help. Yeah, we'll look at
Well,
this.
this we can ignore for now. This is just a table of contents, basically. Kala, we have 8 different tenses. You'll have to remember those. And then kind of skip pada. Just remember that, well, pada is here. There's 2 different sets that you have to learn. So the next part is just the endings. So each one of these, let's put it this way, each one of these has its own endings. That's all you have to know. But it has 2 sets of endings. Vatamana has 2 sets, Panchami has 2 sets, Saptami has 2 sets. They all have 2 sets because there are 2 pada. Okay.
And in those tables, the headings shouldn't be reversed, active and passive. It's P and A.
Parasapada Attanopada.
Ah.
It's the Pali word.
Okay. Sorry.
That's it. This is just examples. So it's not that much. Basically 3 things. You have the tenses. Each tense has a paradigm, and each paradigm has 2 parts. Because one is active and one is passive. Parasapada, Attanopada. But you don't even really have to think of them as, well, no, it is useful. Because there are 2, as we saw here, 2 very different ways. There's more ways, in fact. The Wajika is something we'll have to learn later. I wonder if it's even in this textbook. We'll see anyway. I think it is. It may not be until... we'll see if we have even... We should have Wajika. It's in the text. But yes, you'll see 2 different ways, and so you use 2 different endings. So you generally do follow this, I think. But this is much more common. So beginner Pali, worry a lot more about learning these ones. In fact, I would say you don't so much have to learn these as if you have to know that they exist and get a sense that they end in A here. And Vatamana is, of course, the most common. So you're going to see everywhere. Panchami U is the big, one that shows you. But remember with this one, as I said, yeah, so there are more things like this would be A2, Aintu. Quite often it would be A2, Aintu, Amy instead of Ami. So up here you have this becomes long A usually. Here you have Amy. But there are some roots, when we learn about roots, that some groups of roots that add A anyway. So you look at this and you say, oh, that must be imperative. Not necessarily. Chintemi, I think. It's not necessarily Panchami. But it is useful to notice. You'll see the A there and it'll help you to see that it's probably Panchami, but not always. Satami is Aya. And then the past tenses, kind of just skip over them for now, I think. This one, I think, maybe learn these ones anyway. Visanti, easy to recognize. Kalatipati, don't worry about it. That's it. Do we have time to go over some of the Chakupala?
I did some translations and I have some questions.
Okay, give me your questions.
And can I give a link? I wrote a link.
Can't you highlight things in the text?
I did a colored coding to recognize if and the numbering and okay. I will put the question. So, for instance, I tried to put the declension above, and I have a question in the first paragraph. In the very first paragraph, for instance, nama. Mm-hmm. It is neuter which ends in a, but it doesn't follow any kind of declension.
Oh, we're in part 2 here. That's why I don't see it. Right, and that is because it is used as an abhyaya. It is not. It is the nama that we learned in the declinable section. So this is the indeclinable form of nama. It's like gira. Gira isn't declined either.
Okay.
These are indeclinable. So when nama is used in a sentence, or regularly in a sentence, yes, it's declined, but not in this specific usage. When you say something like this, it is an indeclinable, like gira.
And here, Mahasuvano, it is taken as a name, and it takes the. Sorry.
Are you able to highlight, or am I just not seeing it?
No, I did my own document.
In my doc, can you highlight in my document?
No. I copied and I did another document. My own. I put the link there. If I'm going.
Should I click on yours? Is that better?
Yeah, if you want.
I don't know. All right, we'll try it. Oh, I see.
Can you make it a bit bigger?
Okay, so what's the question?
Because Mahasuvano takes the declension of Kutumbiko.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's like this.
It's what?
That's why it has the ending O.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 1-1.
Yeah. And in the third line, there I have some. I don't remember what Nahatva means.
So the root is naha in regards to bathing or something. maybe that's the ablutions one. One of these is in regards to bathing. I think, no, this one is in regards to bathing. Because here, nahana is the noun form, so naha is in regards to bathing. This one, na, is in regards to something about ablutions, maybe cleaning out your mouth or something. I don't know.
No, I didn't find that.
Yeah, I don't know if you will find it. But these don't have declensions. These are also abhyaya. They're suffixes. These have twa suffix. They are gerunds. They mean having done this, having bathed.
And that's a verb?
It's like a verb. It's a past participle. It takes the function of, it functions as a verb. So rather than saying he did this, you say he having done this, 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 having done this. So it's, you've already done it.
Yes. And with natva, I didn't find the declension because it's feminine, which ends in e,
No,
isn't it?
No,
it's not.
It's like all the rest of these. That's what I'm saying. These are all gerunds.
Ah, so we have 3 verbs there.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, this one's not really a verb. Present participles don't really act as verbs. I mean, maybe kind of. But this is more saying he coming back.
Yeah.
So it's not really forming the function of a verb. It's just talking about him. It's a description of him. So I would actually probably include all of this as one. While coming back, having seen.
And then natva from which root stems?
No.
Ah.
I don't know if it's easy to find in the digital Pali reader.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about it. It's not very common. I don't know it anyway.
And that was misleading because I found nati there and I tried to find.
Well, absolutely. If you ever see twa at the end, there's hardly ever a case where it isn't a gerund.
Okay.
This one is irregular just because of the root, but it's still twa. Okay, I'm going to go back to our document here. So we've gotten all the way to this, I think, right? Did we get all the way to the ending of Pakami?
Yes.
Okay, so atta is another indeclinable. Atta means then, kind of. You can translate it as then. So this is atta plus asa. This is just sandhi. They're not part of the same word. They're just combined together. They don't have any relationship with each other. It's just for speech. So it's a good example of sandhi. So asa isn't where we start because asa isn't the subject. We should really find the subject of the sentence. Do you know what the subject of the sentence is? Remember the word order I talked about? This is not following the word order.
Is it gabo?
Is it gabo?
It is gabo. A good guess. Because of the O, it's usually pretty easy to see when there is one. Gabo means fetus. So we usually go, how we do this? Yeah, for this one we can just, we go subject, then verb. I think that's usually how we do it. Subject, verb, object, then everything else. When you're translating, you might have already seen this, Sunda, but a really good technique is, I may have mentioned this, is to put numbers over everything. So before you even start to do what I'm doing, put numbers over everything. This asa, once you figure out that this is atta and asa, you could say, well, 4-1 or 6-1. This, you might not have any sense of what this is, but forget about it for now. Varyaya could be many things. Could be, I think, 3-1, 4-1. I don't know what it could be. Varyaya. I think it's 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. Kuchiyang is probably 2-1, probably 1-1, and patitasi. Patitasi is a past tense verb. So remember when I said, I showed you this already, that for ajatani you have e or eat, but as I said, it's usually si, or it can be si, and that's fairly common to see this. So this is a past tense of patita. Pati, we've seen this prefix before, right? This is a prefix that we saw. Ta is the root, ta in regards to standing. And then for the past tense, you just stick the ending on tasi, patitasi. Established itself. Became established. Ta in regards to standing, pati to something like firm, stand firm. So it means it got stuck in the womb, or it established itself, got planted in the womb. Planted, and then kuchiyang. Sorry, this is not 2-1, this is 7-1, right? Iyang. My mistake, of course. It would be kuching otherwise. Kuchiyang 7-1. So
But isn't that a masculine that ends in e?
Which one? Kuchi?
Kuchiyang.
Well, let's look it up. It isn't, but we'll see. Kuchi, feminine.
Okay.
The belly, the womb. And it's easy to see because of the ending. It's here. Kuchi, here we are. This is our form 7-1. So this is why it's ang, is to tell you that it's 7-1. Because if you put ratiya, it could have been ratiya, I guess, but you wouldn't want to because it'd be harder to guess what you're saying. It'd be harder for the audience to hear which one your meaning is. When you say ratiyang, the Pali audience would say, 7-1. Well, they wouldn't, of course, but they'd recognize it as being locative. So this is in the belly, in the womb. Yet here, as I said, it could be, as we see here in Kanya, let's look at Kanya. Could be 3, 4, 5, 6, or even 7 potentially. But do we know which one it is?
Is it 3?
So the gabbo established itself in the kuchi 3-1.
Yes, of the wife.
But 3-1 isn't of. 3-1 is with or by.
Then yeah. Then it's 6.
6-1. Remember me saying that 6-1 is the most common, so you can always start with 6-1 and see if it makes sense before you move to the other ones. And how do we do this one? Na.
That is a negation.
Yeah, except it's weird. So Eva we can pull off. Eva is just emphatic. Chiras. I think this is a locative absolute, I think is the term for, a genitive absolute. Absolutive, I can't remember, but this is a subclause, and this isn't a very good example of it. It's hard to see it here, but it's something that you pull out, and it's talking about, well, it's talking about time in this case. But it's a weird sort of thing because nut is supposed to go with verbs, isn't it? Can it go with nouns? No, not necessarily. No, that's true. Okay. Anyway, whatever. This is how it's used. Na is not. Chira means a long time. So chirasa is, I think, locative, or sorry, genitive, talking about. I mean, it's not of a long time. It's just how they say it. But you have to think of these kind of things as being, because you're going to find examples where there's more than one word in genitive or locative. There's two ways that this is formed, I think. And you just understand that they're pulled out. They're separate from the grammar of the rest of it. And in this case, it's talking about time. It's often used to talk about while something is happening. So you might say, someone went to the forest, and then if we want to say, while there was a war going on. I think I mentioned this already. You use these subclauses, and you put it all. We'll see these, I think, throughout the text. But be aware that there's these genitive and locative subclause things. Anyway, jirasa is really just jira meaning not long, I think. I mean, I'm not an expert grammar, so this could be something else, but I think that's what this is. I mean, anyway, regardless, it's absolutely clear what this means, or it is absolutely definite what this means. It means after no long time. Nat jira. It's quite common to say that sort of thing. Nat jira seva. Nat jira seva is quite a common phrase. In fact, you can probably just say that nat jira seva means after no long time. Okay, and then we have another word here, asa. What is asa? Don't forget about asa.
It's him, his wife. It's the sixth one.
Yes, good. Okay, sa. What does sa mean?
It's the 1 for she.
Yes, she referring to, of course, the wife, who doesn't get a name, unfortunately. She's very famous, but she never got named. Okay, so we do this. We take this out. We don't do the. This is how you translate. Don't look for the period. Not right away. Look for the first verb. Not a verb. Not a verb. Not a verb. Functions as a verb. Dua functions as a verb. So we translate this first. She, having known. Okay. Here we see a noun form of the verb. It's a very common thing to do is to say the bawa of the thing. So this we said it established itself or became established. Here we talk about the bawa, and bawa here means the state or the existence, the being of the standing or the establishing. So in English, we might say something like the fact of the establishing or the fact that the thing established itself. But in Pali, it's the fact or the state of the thing or the state of the establishing of the thing. So this having known of the state, the bhava of the establishing, right? The establishing, it's a noun instead of a verb now. This is called kittaka. We'll learn about that later. The way you turn verbs into nouns. the establishing of the gaba, having known. What's this next? And then we do the next part. So this really simplifies things when you break them up this way, because you really can't just try and translate a sentence. Break it up, then we have an easy end part. What does this mean?
Informed him.
Yes, so this is past again, the C. You start to see a pattern. And this is much more useful than trying to memorize paradigms. C is kind of the past tense. It's just E, but you add a sa. Arochesi. In fact, it might as well be C as an ending, I think. Arocheti would be the if it was present, you would say arocheti. That's actually a form. But in past, it becomes arochesi. She told. What did she tell? She told, and what does this mean?
She told him about it.
She didn't tell him, she told to him. You're right. That's how we say it in English.
It's 6-1.
It's 6-1. No, it's 4-1.
It's 4-1.
Yes. Because this isn't, no, you don't say about him like that. You might say 7-1. If 7-1, you might use it in that way. But she told it to him. This would be 4-1. I'm pretty sure. Not 100%. Let's see what I said when I actually was doing Pali. Yes, to him, tassa to him, 4-1. And the id is implied.
And the long A in Arochesi, it's because it was added another A in front of it because it's past.
No, I don't think so. I think the verb is aroch. Because I here is that a prefix. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, definitely. The verb is arocheti. So a is the suffix. Ruch. Here's interesting. Is ruch is the root and it's causative. Arocheti. Causative. This is the ne suffix that will. I don't know if we will even learn about this. I didn't mention causative. No, I know where we'll talk about causative later. We have a moment to talk about it. Don't worry too much yet. But I have mentioned it before because it comes up a lot in this first part.
Yeah, with soda petva.
Yeah, with a lot of those.
It was mentioned last time.
Yeah. So ruch would be ruchati. Actually means something different. Ruchati actually means agrees or something like that. Anyway, arocheti I think means to cause someone to know. I'm not actually sure what the root. You'd have to look up the etymology of it, the derivation. But it's a common enough word. And no, this is the av prefix, not the past tense prefix. So, what is this referring to?
He.
He. Or it. Which one?
He.
He. And where's our verb?
It's adasi, but it's connected with pariharam.
Pariharang. So this would be a nigahita before, right?
Yeah.
And this is a 2-1 form, parihara. And this is adasi. So good example of our verbs. Again, we're seeing a pattern here. We see the si, we can say past tense. We see the a, aha. The a also tells us that it's past tense. Adasi. Because the root is da, or da maybe, in regards to giving. Stick the past tense ending on the end, put an a in the beginning for good measure, and you get past tense adasi. He gave. He gave. And what did he give? He gave a parihara. Means care, I think, right? Protection?
Attention?
Attention, maybe? No,
It means care, I believe.
Care. Attention works, I guess. Give care to, and when you give something, you give it to someone, so this is probably 4-1. To the gaba tasa. What does this mean?
Of her?
Yes, to her gaba. He gave pariha.
It's 4-1.
Tasa?
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think it's 4-1.
What does 4-1 mean?
Of her. Yeah, it's no, 2. It's dative. 2 or 4.
So translate the sentence for me.
He gave attention to her embryo. Or her, her embryo.
Okay, I think you've confused yourself because you're saying to her, but you don't mean to her. What did he give attention to?
To the embryo of her, and then it's 6-1.
If you say to yourself, to her embryo, you say, oh, to her means 4-1.
Yeah.
No, he's not giving it to her. He's giving it to her embryo. So the embryo gets the 4-1.
Okay,
She gets the 6-1.
6.
Yes. Clear?
Clear.
Yes,
You
thank
guys are
you.
experts already. Next sentence. These ones are getting pretty standard, right? Like, this is good. We see so, we see the verb, we got sandhi to deal with, but we got the object right before the verb, and then everything else. Sa, look for the verb at the ending. Oh, good, we found it. Again, looks weird. Well, it doesn't to you because you don't know verbs at all yet, really, but again, the E. Here, no sa, we just have E, but still past tense.
Yes.
Vijay gave birth. She gave birth. What did she give birth to?
Son.
A son.
Son of.
Of? What is this?
That is 3-1, but it's
3-1.
yeah.
What the heck does it mean?
Is it with or by 10 months pregnant?
Okay, so pregnant isn't here. And
It's Chayena.
Achayena. The passing. The passing. With the passing of 10 months. Dasa, we learned numbers today. We quickly learned numbers.
Month, right? 10 months.
Masa means month. With the passing. So it's kind of just an example of the instrumental being used to tell time. And that's common. You'll see tena samayena, at that time. It means by that time. So yeah. But this is easier to translate in English. With the passing of 10 months. We would say that in English.
And here the declension is considered 3-1 because the passing. Okay.
With the passing. But it's not how you normally use instrumental. It's special sort of with regards to time. Next sentence, where's the subject?
Is it tongue?
And in fact, we have to translate this really fairly hard sentence, I think. Some of these are going to get pretty hard. This may be one of them. We'll see. It is not tongue.
It's sati.
Let's look at the verb. What's the verb?
It's Pali tongue.
The verb?
Isn't it
The verb is Pali tongue?
preserved?
No. Preserved is an adjective in this case, a gunanama.
Then akasi.
Akasi is a verb. It's our verb. It doesn't really help us, but okay, you're gonna have to figure it out. And as you said, it's sati. Sati is the subject. So the sati did something. Now, why do we have this out front? It's actually quite simple. Wait, just a second. No, it's not so simple. It's not simple. Okay. This is... It's actually, I think, for emphasis. Because you put this out front because you want to emphasize it. This means he. It's 2-1. He, and then the rest of the sentence. But it's 2-1. It's not the subject of the sentence. So the sati made, and so on. We'll see what that is. This word, pull it out entirely. 7-1 is a good indication that it's potentially about time or place. And here we have the word divasa. Divasa means day. So this here has nothing to do with it. You don't grammatically relate it to the rest of the sentence. You can pull it out first. Nama gahana divasa. So here's an example of nama used as an actual actual nama, an actual noun. And so it would have a declension, except that it's in a compound, so you take the declension off. So nama gahana. Gahana means taking or grasping. You're taking, let's say. On the day of taking a name. So it's on the naming day. So pull that out. Nothing to do with the rest of the sentence, just gives us an indication of when. The meaning, for meaning-wise, it's going to plays an important role in the sentence, but for grammar, no. Don't try and relate this to anything else in the sentence grammatically. On the day of the gaining a name or getting a name, and we won't translate this the Pali way. We'll just understand this was taken out front because of the emphasis, I think. The sati made, and here's another example. So here it's declined.
Can I ask?
Made a name. And then what do we have here? In fact, here we might go, the sati made him a name. Can't remember the exact grammar here. Tongue. I actually don't know. I can't remember what this is. What is that tongue, actually? For him. Okay. Yeah, it's weird. I was wrong. It's just a weird case of using the accusative. It's dative, but it's accusative. So I think I mentioned this before, where sometimes they use the wrong case, and I think, because I must have had to look this up in the book to figure out exactly what it means. It's just weird. It actually is dative. On the day of the taking of a name for him. On the day of his taking a name, something like this. So these actually do go together. Let's say that's true. Apparently true. On the day of his taking a name, the Seti made the name Palo iti. And this is just how we in English would say quotes, Palo, right? That's what the iti means. Literally, you'd say, he made a name thus, Palo. He made a name thus, Palo, or Pala. Pala means protector, right? And here we see it here, protection. Palo. He gave him the name Palo. Now, why did he do it? This means from, I think. I think this is a 5-1. So the doing of it comes from the state. Atta ending here means the state of having gained, the having, right? The state of he, the baby, having been gained by himself, meaning the Sati. Maybe screw this up. Being gained by the Sati. No, let's not do that. Having been gained because of Nisaya, dependent on. Nisaya is actually a gerund. It's a weird gerund. It's not Twa, it's Nisaya. It's just because of I didn't mention this. It's actually because of this root, this prefix ni. When Twa verbs have a prefix, they sometimes become aya instead, I think. Weird grammar. Anyway, this is gerund. You can just say having depended on, or dependent on, based on the Wanapati, the Lord of the Forest, that was protected by himself. Yeah, this is where the Atana comes. All right. So putting it together, he made him the name Palo, made for him, or of him maybe, the name of him, Palo, because of the state of having been gained, or having gained the boy, dependent upon the Lord of the Forest being that was protected by him, by the self, by the Sati himself. Clear enough? Hard. It's a hard sentence. So
can Nisaya Ladata can be translated as received the support?
No. This is the state of having been gained. Atta is state. The state of having been gained in dependence upon something. This thing. The Wanapati that was protected by him.
And another question, Divasa, it's irregular or it's regular?
It's regular.
And it's regular masculine that ends in A?
Yeah, 7-1.
Okay, thank you. Now let's stop there. This is a lot. We went through too much today. I don't want to go too quickly.